Senator Sullivan has a bill that would spell out the sanctions that would happen in a Taiwan contingency. Do you think that putting those down in writing, passing a bill, is something that is helpful in deterring Communist China, or is that giving away our playbook?
In today's high-stakes Senate hearing, Senator Pete Ricketts threw down the gauntlet, demanding answers on how the U.S. can help Taiwan survive a Chinese energy embargo. The numbers are alarming. Taiwan imports nearly all its energy, just 6 weeks of coal, barely a week and a half of gas. If China throws up a blockade, Taiwan could plunge into darkness in days.
All right, so Mr. Singleton, you were talking about energy a little bit earlier, about being the soft underbelly of Taiwan. The island imports 98% of its energy. I think it's 42 days of coal it has on hand. I think you said 10, maybe it's 11 days of natural gas. You mentioned that they should dust off some of their mothballed nuclear facilities. Senator Coons and I had a table talks exercise that we led with several of our colleagues to go through this with you. The scenario underscored how quickly an embargo or a blockade could escalate into a crisis, and highlighted some of these things. And that's why we introduced the Taiwan Energy Security and Anti-Embargo Act to help strengthen Taiwan's energy resilience. Based upon that tabletop exercise that you facilitated in May, and then you've done in other places as well, what are some of the key lessons that stand out and some of the concrete steps that we ought to be taking to be able to strengthen Taiwan's energy resilience?
Ricketts didn't mince words. He highlighted a chilling war game, a simulated embargo that led to panic and economic meltdown. His answer, a new bipartisan bill, the Taiwan Energy Security and Anti-Embargo Act. The goal? Give Taiwan a fighting chance if Beijing tries to squeeze.
No, thank you for the question. I think my key takeaway was just how easy it was for the PRC to exert a little bit of pressure and achieve the desired end state that it was hoping for, which was societal panic. Obviously, I think some of the key provisions we need to be thinking about are helping Taiwan with energy diversification. We have lots of LNG here. You're right, it's 10 days of storage there. We need to be thinking about how we can fast track and sign long-term deals, offload agreements with the Taiwanese. They want to buy our LNG. They want to diversify away from countries like Qatar. What can we do to sort of fast track that? And then encourage greater integration, I think, with some of the trusted suppliers, including countries like Australia on the coal side. We can help them with things like strategic stockpiling. We can help them build up emergency energy reserves, particularly in the coal space. We want to expand, and I think Dr. Ratner used a great term, sort of elongate and expand the sort of deterrence rubber band, if you will, here to think beyond 10 days. How many more days can we build in to build redundancy? Critical infrastructure resilience in Taiwan is a massive problem. We need to think about hardening their energy infrastructure. That includes LNG terminals and pipelines and power grids and ports, making them sort of to inoculate them against some of the cyber operations and disruptions that the PRC is orchestrating.
Enter energy expert Mr. Singleton. He laid it out. China doesn't need tanks to cause chaos. Just a little pressure can trigger panic. Singleton's advice? Taiwan needs to diversify, fast. They want to buy American liquefied natural gas, but deals and infrastructure are crawling. Singleton called for long-term energy deals, more stockpiling, and tighter ties with allies like Australia. But there's a twist. Singleton warned that Taiwan's ports and pipelines are wide open to cyber attacks. If China hacks the grid, it's game over. So, digital defense is just as crucial as tanks or ships. And get this, even if Taiwan's fuel ships make it through, global insurers might refuse to cover them during a crisis. Singleton says the U.S. needs to set up war-backed insurance, just like Reagan did in the 80s. No insurance, no trade.
And we have to do this with the private sector. I think one of the key takeaways that from both the exercise we did with the committee, but also foreign capitals, was how much the insurance risk market plays in here, and whether it's thinking about reflagging operations or potential convoy operations to break a quarantine or a blockade, but also to think about war-backed insurance that could be provided in the event of a contingency through U.S. and allied partners to ensure that transit of commercial goods and LNG continues to flow. Again, there are historical precedents for all of these things, particularly in the 1980s under Ronald Reagan and the Iran-Iraq War. We just have to dust off the history and get that muscle memory back.
Now, you also mentioned that China has its own vulnerabilities. What are some specific steps that we could do that would remind Communist China that they've got vulnerabilities as well?
Let's not forget that the Chinese are almost wholly dependent on their food needs from other countries. These are countries where the United States has tremendous diplomatic leverage. Dr. Ratner mentioned energy vulnerabilities. These are pretty severe and intense for the Chinese. But also, we have to remember that the Chinese economy is currently in a state of disarray. We have exceptionally low growth. We have an economic model that's running on fumes and an economic model that's highly vulnerable to sanctions. I think sanctions signaling is so important. I saw that Chairman Risch introduced a bill, I think, today on that very topic. We need to make clear to the Chinese that specific Chinese state-owned entities and banks could become targets of U.S. financial sanctions in the event that they pursue a quarantine operation. And I think that that would seriously challenge China's calculus.
Ricketts flipped the script. What about China's own weaknesses? Singleton pointed out that China's economy is sputtering, and it relies on food imports from U.S. allies.
Senator Sullivan has a bill that would spell out the sanctions that would happen in a Taiwan contingency. Do you think that putting those down in writing, passing a bill, is something that is helpful in deterring communist China, or is that giving away our playbook?
I don't think it gives away our playbook. I think consistency in messaging is essential. It forms one of those, part of the three-legged stool, right? Consistent messaging, credible capacity, which is, I think, an area where the Biden administration really excelled. And we also have to be thinking about these coordinated countermeasures. That three-legged stool, I would say there are opportunities to really harden it and do so through legislation, but also very clear signaling to the PRC that this is not costless. And I think today, the challenge, of course, is that the Chinese are increasingly becoming overconfident, and that could lead to miscalculation.
So if we were able to pass a sanctions bill such as Senator Sullivan has, what about getting our allies on board? You've all stressed the importance of our allies, and I agree it's the strategic competitive advantage we have that the PRC will never have. So how do we work with our allies on something that would be involved in sanctions?
If Beijing acts, America has leverage, sanctions, financial pressure, and more. The final piece, unity. Singleton stressed that the U.S. can't act alone. We need Japan, Australia, and Europe on board, just like the semiconductor controls. Only together can we convince China the price is too high.
I think it takes work. It takes engagement, of course. I'm reminded of the excellent work that the Biden administration actually did on unifying export controls on the PRC. Tarun Chhabra, in particular at the NSC, was flying around the world convincing all of our friends and allies to exert tool controls on the Chinese to slow down semiconductor manufacturing and tool design and chip design. We can mirror that same, piggyback on that same model, I think, by convincing partners and allies that we're all going to do this together, that's a unified sanctions framework, and that there will probably have to be some select carve-outs in certain cases.
And then encouraging our allies like Japan and Australia to pass similar bills?
Whether they pass certain bills or there's just a commitment in kind to follow what we do, I think that signaling alone really seeds doubt into China's decision-making calculus, and then they're forced to contend with whether they can continue to sustain a war against Taiwan or continue to fund certain parts of its military modernization.
Great. Senator Coons.
Thank you. Senator Ricketts, let me just follow along in that line. Mr. Singleton, I do think that one of the things we need to keep
Bottom line, Taiwan's energy supply isn't just their problem. It's a global flashpoint. Preparation is the only path to peace. If you think America should stand strong with its allies, hit subscribe, like, and share. This isn't just politics, it's about the future of the Pacific. Stay tuned for more real talk, right here.